Thank you for reading my Creative Companion, and thanks for pressing play on this video. Now you've read the Creative Companion and you've got your head around what it is that I'm trying to do, and hopefully a lot of it has resonated with you. The purpose of this video really is my final pitch to you to try and convince you to give these interventions a try. When I say give these interventions a try, I mean anything like these interventions. What I'm really trying to do is encourage you to use methods in the classroom that unlock creativity. How you do it is absolutely up to you. I just hope that maybe this gives you a little bit of inspiration, because what I've found is that using these interventions with my students has changed the way I teach. It's completely changed the atmosphere of the classroom, and the feedback that I'm getting tells me that this is transforming the experience of university for my students, and I think that makes this absolutely worth trying. So if you want to plan ahead, and a lot of teachers do, that's fine. The thing about planning ahead is it helps you to make sure that the students feel safe and secure. You can make sure that the activity is going to happen at a point where they're maybe relaxed, or they're more open-minded, or it's a really good time in the session for you to do something a little bit different with them. The other great thing about planning ahead is that you can make absolutely sure that the activities are relevant to the content. So to give you an example, when we did Colouring In the first time, we watched a film about 60s fashion, and then I sourced colouring pages that were of 60s outfits. So the two activities married together really, really well, and I think that a lot of teachers will feel much better if the activities that they're doing with the students are directly relevant to the course content. But you don't have to plan these activities, you can be completely spontaneous. I mean, this is about play after all, and even mindfulness is something that you can do any time of day, any time you feel like it. So really, my advice would be, don't feel constrained, don't feel like if you've not planned in the activities at the beginning of a module that therefore you can't use them. You can use them really on an ad hoc basis, and you can use them spontaneously. To give you an example, I was working with some third year BA students in PR at the European Communication School, and I realised how much the students were wanting to express their creativity. I hadn't planned to do any activities with them, but I actually managed to build in a one-off workshop with them where we tried about 7 different creative activities. They were different activities to the ones that I'd researched, but they were kind of inspired by them. And I think this is the great thing about trying to stimulate the creativity of your students. As a teacher, you can be creative as well, and part of being creative is being spontaneous, going with the flow. If you see an opportunity to use these interventions or ones that you've created yourself, just go for it. So as I've discussed in the Creative Companion that you've read, one of the things that I've done in the process of my research is to come up with this concept of mindful play. And it's something that started because I wanted to get around the stigma that's attached to mindfulness. Because for some students, if you go into the classroom and you say, we're going to do a mindfulness activity, or I want you to be mindful for 2 minutes, they're not going to react well to that. They're going to feel that it's too, hippie-ish, and is this why we came to university? And that was some of the feedback that I got from students at the end of the activities when we discussed it. They said if you'd come in and said we were going to do mindfulness, they would have felt really resistant to that, or they would have felt that it wasn't appropriate. I think the thing is with mindful play, it takes away some of that stigma, because we're just doing the mindfulness is built into the activity. So for example, with the styling activity, before the students start grabbing clothes and start putting outfits together, there's just that time to think about what they're doing, to feel the fabrics, to start planning ahead. And it's a really big thing. It's one of the biggest lessons that I've learned in my career as a journalist, is that we jump too quickly from idea to execution. And what mindful play does is it really helps students to understand the importance of exploring ideas and just thinking and taking that time to think and be present before they actually start doing the activity. And to get to a point where you can practice mindful play with students, you do need to not re-educate them, but you need to get them in the right frame of mind for doing the activity. So you will need to ask them to put mobile phones away, and they won't want to do it at first, but once they do it, they'll start to do that automatically. And they actually find, and the students told me in their feedback, that they loved being cut off from everything else. They really enjoyed the idea of playing in a mindful way, so being completely absorbed by the activity that they were doing, having fun with it, feeling independent, feeling free, not feeling controlled in a classroom environment or by the teacher. You know, all students are different, and your students might be completely up for the idea of mindfulness. But for my students, I think keeping it light, keeping it informal, not putting too much pressure on them in terms of the mindfulness aspect of this really, really helped. It helped them embrace the activity, it helped them to have fun, not to see it as something that was meditative and really heavy. They really enjoyed it, and I felt like I really was giving them a way to release their creativity, and after all, that's what this is all about. So the activities that I designed were linked together, and I did that for a reason. What I wanted to do is start with something really simple and then build up to something that was much more ambitious and that the students felt was truly creative. So I started with colouring in, and colouring in is such a brilliant activity because anybody can do it. You know, there's lines to follow, but you can choose the colours and you create something that's completely unique. It's a brilliant leveller, it gets people talking, it's a great way to start, and I'd really suggest that you could try this as a first activity. And then the way that I built my activities were they kind of stepped up each time in terms of the creative control that the students had over the exercises. So we went from colouring in to the jewellery making, where again all the ingredients for the jewellery making were there for the students, but what they actually made was completely up to them. Then we went to the styling, and that was a little bit more free again, so they had the clothes there, but what they created was again unique, and they were telling their own stories. And then the final activity, the role play, that was the much more ambitious activity. That's where they really had to put themselves out there. So the role play activity definitely required the most trust, but because we started with something really simple with the colouring and built up gradually to it, it worked perfectly. And it just kind of mirrored the way that I was trying to build trust with the students, that I didn't want to throw them in at the deep end and give them something that might make them feel really uncomfortable. I have had students where I've said, you know, did you play as children, in a way to try and identify with them that they are creative, and they actually have said no. And I think if you have students like that and you suddenly say to them, right, we're going to do role play, they're not going to feel happy about it, and actually could overwhelm them. So I think if you wanted to link your activities, you could do something absolutely similar. So make them relevant to the content of the module that you're teaching, start with something really simple, and then build up so the students gain confidence all the time, and by the time you get to those kind of final weeks of the module and you're doing the more adventurous interventions, they feel really comfortable with it, and it absolutely builds their creative confidence. So I tried these activities with two really different groups of students. The first group were from London Metropolitan University, a university that's really focused on widening participation. My students come from really diverse backgrounds. Some of them have been out of education for a long time. They're different ages, mature students, some are straight out of school. It's a really, really interesting and diverse mix of students. Those students were in the first year of their course. They were about halfway through. We started the activities in the second semester. So they already knew each other, although they hadn't necessarily bonded to the extent that they could have. The other group of students were really different. They were from City University of London, where I also lecture. They were third years. A mixture of students who'd taken their actual third year as a gap year and then come back to complete their degrees, students who'd gone straight through the course into the third year, and some study abroad students as well. I think that the approach that both groups of students had, the third years at City were definitely, you know, they were resistant at first, especially when I told them to put their mobile phones away. That was not a suggestion that went well. But once they'd done that, it was fine, and they accepted it. With the first years, they were more sceptical in a kind of giggly, schoolyard kind of way, and some of the students at London Met really were resistant, and they never actually embraced these activities. They refused to, for example, close their eyes and try the mindfulness. Some of those students were actually on the verge of leaving the course and have since left, and I think that certainly has an impact in terms of whether the students are going to be really throw themselves into these activities. If they've got half an eye on leaving the course, or they're not happy in their studies generally, you might find that it's more of a struggle. The thing that really came across with these activities in terms of their flexibility was just how well suited they are to any age group. So since I finished doing my research, I've used the interventions with a group of agency juniors at The Guardian, doing a masterclass for them. They absolutely loved it. I've done it with students who were all from Europe at the University of Greenwich. They absolutely loved it. I think these activities work for any age. They work really at any stage of the course. Yes, I think students will say that they would prefer to do it right from the beginning, and that's a lesson that I've learned and something that I'm going to try and do. But I do think you can introduce these activities. It's worth a try. So don't feel that if you're at the end of teaching a course and you're with third years and they've nearly finished, there's no point, it's too late. I think you can give it a try. The feedback you get is probably going to be, I wish we'd have done this from the start, but it's still worth having a go, because in the moments that these students are actually trying the activities, they're present, they're engaged, the mindfulness is kicking in, and they're just having a really good time. They feel relaxed, they feel removed from all the other stresses that are going on their course and in their lives, and I think that is absolutely worth pursuing. But really what this is all about is having fun. The students said that these exercises gave them a sense of freedom, creative expression and fun. So when I first tried the interventions, I was taking feedback from the students in lots of different ways. There was an ongoing conversation. I also gave them questionnaires and feedback sheets occasionally, and then we had a conversation at the end of the module that I recorded. I also took feedback from journals as well that the students at London Metropolitan University were keeping. There were 3 words that came up more than anything else through all the feedback. The 3 words were relaxed, happy and inspired, all really powerful emotional words that you would want your students to be experiencing in the classroom. So from journal feedback, the students said that they really enjoyed the tasks. One said that she found the colouring a really relaxed way to spend the end of a session. She said it wasn't something that she expected to do at university, but she really enjoyed it. One student said of the jewellery making session that she loved doing stuff like this when she was a child, and it was good to have that sense of freedom again and that sense of fun and being younger and being carefree, a break from the difficulties of the course generally. So when we had the group discussion, the students talked about lots of different themes and what the activities brought up for them. One of the things that kept coming back, and this ties into the use of the word relaxed that came up quite a lot through the feedback, was that they felt that the interventions were a break from the norm at university, that this was a chance for them to express themselves, to relax, to feel detached from a lot of the stress they were feeling in other areas of the course. One of the students said during the discussion that she loved the fact that the activities took up all the space in her head and that she was completely present. She could just concentrate on what she was doing. One of the students in our group discussion described this as a new way of learning, completely different from anything she'd ever done before. Another student said that she felt that the exercises allowed her to distance herself from the outside world. One of my favourite comments was actually a student said that she felt that she enjoyed learning for the sake of it, and that's what these interventions did, and she commented that, isn't this what university is supposed to be for? One of the comments was, I have the bracelet I made hanging up in my room. Only last night I was looking at it. Out of all the things I've done this year, it's the only thing I've physically kept in my room. I thought it was fun making that. There's nothing else I can say I've got hanging up from a lesson that I can look at and have a good memory from it. The module evaluation feedback from the students at City was really helpful too. That gave me a really good overall picture of how the creative exercises had fit into their studies. And just to point out that I didn't actually ask them in the mod evaluation feedback for specific comments about the interventions. This is a process that the students do at the end of every module. So it was quite interesting that this was one of the things that they chose to focus on, probably more than anything else. One said that she loved being able to fully express who she was in the class. Another student said the module was a breath of fresh air, inspiring, and a chance to be fully creative. One said that she felt comfortable in the classes and confident enough to come up with big and wacky ideas to bring out the best in their work. And again, this was a theme that really came through the exercises, that it built confidence and it allowed students to take risks, which was one of the motivations for doing the exercise in the first place. One of the students said that she liked Jo's creative ideas. They can seem mad on paper, but actually can help de-stress the brain and helped me create some cool ideas. You know, creativity and unlocking creativity doesn't have to be a massive mystery. What you can do is you can just talk to the students as you go. So rather than giving them a questionnaire at the end of a session, you can just talk to them while you're actually doing the activities, while you're playing the games. Find out how they're feeling, find out what they want to do more of, find out if this is something that is inspiring them. And as soon as I started to do that, just to engage in conversation with the students as an ongoing process. So every time we were doing an activity, I'd tell them why we were doing it. And then when we finished doing the activity, we'd talk about, did they enjoy it? Did they want to do more of it? And it's an honest way to work. It's a way of getting closer to your students. It's a way of, again, building trust. But just keeping that conversation going is so important. And it's not just students, it's colleagues too. Talk to them about what you're doing. Don't try and shroud this in mystery. Yeah, you're going to need to be brave because some people will doubt it. One colleague said to me, you know, where's the meat in all this? My students are going to want to know, like, you know, when do they actually produce an article or when do they actually start writing things down? But for me, this is the meat. This is the bit that's really important, the conversation, that dialogic learning, getting the students interacting with each other and with you as the teacher. So don't treat this like a mystery. Get the conversation going and see where it leads you. So there's no point me pretending that things can't go wrong with this. Of course they can go wrong, and the trials that I've done so far, it wasn't perfect. So the biggest problem that I faced was the students from London Metropolitan University. We didn't get through to the fourth activity, the role play. Going to a different location to do one of the exercises I think is a great idea, but the activity and the location that I chose were really, really far away from the campus. So they were right down in South London and the university's in North London. It was too much for the students. I couldn't organise them. By this point, lots of them were dropping out of the course anyway, and it just became obvious that it was never going to happen. So we did a different activity instead. We went to the Victoria and Albert Museum and we had a really nice chat and did some role play there in the gardens. So there's going to be things that will go wrong with this. It's not perfect. You're going to have students who feel really sceptical about it, who don't want to play, who will be resistant. The logistics of getting them around the campus, if you need to go to different rooms that are more creative, because obviously a static room with chairs or tables in a row is not going to work that well for the activities. So you're going to face challenges, but ultimately I think it's worth powering through and trying to make this happen. So what's my view as a teacher? Well, the interventions that I tried led to increased confidence, trust, transformation and ultimately change. And isn't that what we're trying to get out of our students when they're at university? These are all really positive things. I think it's changed me as a teacher. I feel freer myself. I feel like I'm having a greater, not really influence, but just playing a more important role in my students' lives, helping them to do things in different ways and releasing their creative confidence. So all the activities that I tried encourage dialogic learning, and that's something else that we really want to do at university, is encourage the students to talk to us and to talk to each other. The most important thing for me was just that the students were happy. You know, these interventions weren't without their problems and they weren't perfect, but ultimately the students said that they really, really enjoyed them, and that's something that, you know, is such a great thing to hear from your students. So as a teacher, what I've seen is increased student satisfaction, and this is something that we all want, not just for our own ourselves as teachers, but we want to see the metrics as well. We want to see increased student satisfaction at our universities on our courses, and the module evaluation feedback I had was absolutely brilliant. It's more a reflection of the activities and how the students changed than my teaching. Although something that is so important, if you're going to try this, you have to throw yourself in at the deep end. You have to be there with the students, running around with them, learning with them, doing the role play, playing the games, doing the colouring in. That's a really, really important part of all this. As well as helping them at university, what you're also doing, you're increasing their employability, and that is something that's so crucial, particularly for contemporary journalism students, my students, but for yours too. So what have I learned overall as a teacher, and what advice can I give to you if you want to give this a try? Well, the most important thing is that you've got to have fun. I'm not ordering you to have fun, I'm just encouraging you to throw yourself into this, to lose your inhibitions, to really put yourselves in there with the students. If you're worried about looking a fool or making a mistake, it doesn't matter. What's the worst thing that can happen? The students have loved it when I've joined in with them. When we did the role play exercise at Tooting Bec Lidar, I played a PR and they were journalists and celebrities and their characters, and we had such a great time, and it just left such an amazingly positive taste in all our mouths because we had so much fun. And that's the kind of thing that if you're going to try this, you've really, really got to do. It's like 100% commitment. It's not being afraid. It's just throwing yourself in at the deep end and really, really going for it. If you do that, you're just going to have this amazing bond with the students, and they're going to get so much out of it too. One of my students sent me an email when he finished his course, and he said that he really believed that the creativity that we'd done within the module had changed his whole approach, his journalistic approach, and he said that it made him a better journalist. And you can't get better feedback than that. That's the kind of feedback I want to get from every student. And this is shareable, is flexible. You can do this in other contexts. So when I did the role play, yeah, we were pretending to be journalists. But if you're a scientist, you can create a role play exercise that captures your context. You could, if you're a social worker, you're training social work students, you can make that happen too. It's all about flexibility, it's about your creative imagination, and it's just about giving into this whole thing and being the facilitator rather than being a teacher, and enjoying it and grasping the moment and just being spontaneous. Thanks for watching and for reading The Creative Companion, and I hope that this has convinced you to give these creative interventions or something like it a try in your own classroom. Good luck.